Chapter 4. Into the Whispering Woods. The Whispering Woods sat at the very edge of Abigail's town, so close kids could ride their bikes there, and so mysterious that hardly anyone actually did. Most people said the woods were perfectly normal, but others whispered that the trees talked when the wind blew a certain way, and that strange creatures wandered between the trunks when no one was looking. Naturally, Steve wanted to go immediately. "This is the ideal training ground," he announced, adjusting the stars on his wizard hat. "The perfect place for beginner spells. Nature is very forgiving." Abigail raised an eyebrow. "Forgiving? Yesterday you almost turned our backyard into a magical jungle." "Exactly, and afterward the yard returned to normal. Nature is resilient. Your mother's flower pots, however, are not." Abigail remembered the flower pots that had briefly grown legs and sprinted across the patio. "Okay," she said slowly, "but we're not doing anything dangerous." "Of course not," Steve said confidently, far too confidently. They walked along the winding path leading to the woods. Leaves rustled overhead even though the air was still. The trees seemed to lean forward slightly, listening. "Are the trees watching us?" Abigail whispered. Steve lifted his wand like a flashlight. "Trees do not watch. They merely observe with great intensity, completely natural." "That sounds like the same thing," Abigail muttered. As they stepped through the shadowy entrance, a cool hush wrapped around them. Sunlight filtered down through the branches in shimmering patches like enchanted windows opening and closing. Abigail shivered, excited. "It's pretty," she whispered. "It's magnificent," Steve said, his voice hushed with awe. The deeper they walked, the more the trees bent toward them. Moss coated the trunks in soft green blankets. The leaves on the ground looked freshly fallen, even though it wasn't autumn. Then Abigail heard it, a whisper, soft, faint, like someone sighing from far, far away. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Steve perked up. "Yes! Woodland murmuration, a common magical phenomenon in enchanted forests, completely harmless, usually." "Usually?" Before Steve could explain, something dropped from a branch. A squirrel, except not quite a squirrel. Its tail sparkled like tinsel, and when it blinked, tiny stars twinkled in its eyes. "Hello, small glowing rodent," Steve said politely. The creature squeaked, bowed, and scampered off. Abigail giggled. "I like it here." "So do I," Steve said, "which is why we shall perform a very important spell. A detection spell." "Detection," Abigail repeated. "Yes, to find magical trouble before magical trouble finds us. A magical radar of sorts." Abigail bit her lip. "Maybe we should avoid spells that explode or grow things too big." "This one is safe," Steve promised. "Just a tiny glowing bubble." He pointed his wand. "Detector Mystico." A small blue bubble appeared, rising gently into the air. Abigail grinned. "Steve, it worked!" Steve puffed up proudly until the bubble made a sound. "Bwip, bwip, bwip." Steve's smile faded. "That is not in the spell description." The bubble stretched, wobbled, and poof! Split into 12 bubbles, then into dozens, then into hundreds, each glowing a different color. "Oh no," Abigail breathed. The bubbles drifted between the trees like confused jellyfish. Steve panicked. "Why does everything multiply around me? Why can't anything stay singular?" A bright green bubble tapped a tree. The tree giggled. Another bubble whispered Abigail's name as it floated past her ear. She jumped. "It whispered at me!" "Detection bubbles are not designed for whispering," Steve squeaked. "They are malfunctioning in whimsical ways. The bubbles spread deeper into the woods." "We have to catch them!" Abigail cried. They chased them, dodging, batting, leaping after glowing spheres that danced out of reach. One bubble stuck to a log, turned into a glowing frog. Another popped over moss, and tiny shimmering mushrooms sprouted instantly. "This is magical decoration," Steve groaned. "The opposite of detection." They ran deeper until the trees opened into a clearing Abigail had never seen. Ancient trunks spiraled toward the sky, forming a perfect ring. In the center sat a pond glowing faintly lavender. The bubbles drifted over it, humming. "Why are they humming?" Abigail whispered. "Because," Steve said, swallowing hard, "they're about to activate their detection ability all at once. The forest will think something enormous is happening." "Isn't something enormous happening?" "That is exactly the problem." The bubbles brightened. The pond rippled. Trees leaned in. Steve sucked in a breath. "We need a containment spell." "A what?" "It wraps magic up like a burrito. Quick, before they activate." "Is it safe?" Abigail asked. "No, but it's our only chance." He raised his wand. Containifco bubble net. A shimmering net shot upward, wrapping the cluster of bubbles. It cinched tight. The humming grew louder, then stopped. The bubbles froze, sparkled, and pop, they vanished. The entire clearing exhaled. Steve collapsed on his back. We survived. Abigail dropped beside him. I thought you said this spell was safe. No, Steve corrected breathlessly. I said the planned spell was safe. This one was improvised and mildly terrifying. The trees rustled gently, almost affectionately. Maybe the forest likes us, Abigail said. It should, Steve replied. We prevented a magical panic. Steve, look. A tiny glowing figure drifted above the lavender pond. A sprite, no bigger than Abigail's hand, wings like flower petals. It smiled shyly, whispered, "Thank you," and vanished. Abigail's eyes widened. Did that really happen? Yes, Steve said softly. Sprites appear only when magic is used with good intentions. So we did something right today, Abigail said. Steve nodded proudly. Yes, forest unharmed, disaster contained, minimal chaos. A tree suddenly sneezed, blasting leaves everywhere. They both jumped and then burst into laughter. Okay, Abigail chuckled. Maybe not zero chaos. Never zero, Steve said. As they headed back through the woods, sunlight warming their faces, neither noticed the faint shimmer watching them from behind the trees. Their Whispering Woods adventure was far from over.
Abigail danced in her polka dot boots, Steve by her side with his magic pursuits, a capybara with a sparkle and a twist, casting spells he could never resist. Oh Steve, the magical beast, a capybara wizard at every feast. With a twitch of his whiskers, the world takes a spin. Abigail laughs as the cast begins. They turn the moon into a big balloon, floated past the stars, landed in Cancun. Steve said hola with a magical grin. Taco shells rained and the party began. He wiggled his nose, the maracas shook. Abigail sang from her spellbound book. Oh Steve, the magical beast, a capybara wizard at every feast. With a twitch of his whiskers, the world takes a spin. Abigail laughs as the cast begins. They wiggled his nose, the maracas shook. Abigail sang from her spellbound book. Oh Steve, the magical beast, a capybara wizard at every feast. With a twitch of his whiskers, the world takes a spin. Abigail laughs as the cast begins. He made the rivers dance, the mountains hum, turned a pumpkin into a drum. Abigail said, Steve, you're right, my friend. Let's never let this magic end.